Hey, Nashvillians. Welcome to the You Matter Nashville podcast, the place where every story we share is a celebration of you, the heartbeat of our community. I'm Jason Hoover, delighted to be one half of your hosting duo.
And I'm Mindy Hoover, joining you alongside Jason to bring you the stories of inspiring individuals and unsung heroes making a positive impact right here in our hometown.
Every episode is about passions, dreams, and actions that stitch together the Middle Tennessee community.
So if you're looking to get inspired by the good happening around us, or if you want to hear from the change makers who believe, just like us, that you matter, then hit that follow button on your favorite podcast platform.
And if you are looking to make a move in the Middle Tennessee area, Mindy and I are real estate professionals and would be honored to serve you with excellence.
Now, let's dive into another episode of You Matter Nashville.
Welcome to You Matter Nashville, where we interview community heroes making a difference in others. I'm Jason Hoover.
And I am Mindy Hoover, and I am so glad to have our next guest with us today. She is Erika Gorman, and she has the Three Strands Family Center in Columbia, Tennessee. And thank you so much for coming on today. I cannot wait to hear everything that you plan to do for the community of Columbia.
Thank you for having me. This is so great.
Well, Erika, I want to first start out and share or say that you are starting something new, right? You've got a brand new nonprofit. So this is now. Have you had a nonprofit before?
I have not had a nonprofit before.
So this is all new territory for you.
So this is new territory.
Perfect.
It is.
I love it. I love people giving back, and can't wait to dive into your story and what Three Strands. Three Strands Family does and how it's impacting people, not only in Columbia, but it's going to be like all of Middle Tennessee. Is that correct?
Yeah, we really wanted to bring some support to Columbia specifically, but the more that I've been talking and meeting with families, the more that I'm hearing people don't want to travel up to Nashville and Franklin for certain services. And so it sounds like it's maybe broadening to Middle Tennessee.
Great.
But we'll see where it goes.
Great. So I'll tell you what, how about we do this? How about you share kind of an overview of what your mission is with your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So Three Strands Family Center, our mission is to support any new and expectant family in Columbia. And we do that through offering classes and workshops and education for families, their caregivers, their siblings, as they're navigating through pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and into early childhood.
Awesome. I have your website here. It's a nice website, by the way.
It is.
Did you do that?
Thank you. I did. I have a wonderful friend who's offered to do our branding, and
great.
Because of timeline of getting the launch done and everything, I was like, hey, why don't I just get something up and running for now, and then we can redo it after launch. So I spent many hour doing that.
I mean, you can redo it, but it looks great to me. I like it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I see your little story here, which you moved to. So for our listeners, you moved to Columbia, Tennessee when?
So my husband and I moved with our 2-month-old and our dog in April 2022, and drove across the country with the truck and the trailer and had a few pitfalls along the way to get here.
Uh-oh.
And it was one of those like couldn't get out of California situations, like tire flat tire on the first day, and then flat tire exploded on the freeway the second day, and then it was just like one thing after another. So it took us like 8 days to get out here. But we did it. We made it. And we had, a 2-month-old, which they're not supposed to sit in the car seat for very long. So it was a lot of pulling over, giving her a break, and letting the dog out and letting the baby out. And my husband likes to stop for snacks. So, all those things.
Well, see, I was the one, I was like, we're not stopping till we get there. So you better hold on.
Yeah. And I'm like, and I'm nursing. So that's happening.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. I will say I definitely did some like nursing on the go while we're driving, hop in the back seat. You just have to as a mom. I think that's everyone in that boat.
Yeah. Or it's never ending thing. Yeah. We lived in South Texas, and we would drive to Houston a lot. It was like an hour and a half. And there's times
2 hours.
2 hours. I'd like to make things look better, but but I would, like come into the back of the Suburban. I'm like, you just make it happen. You just make it happen. It's
for
part
sure.
of being a mommy.
For sure.
Yeah,
it is.
We actually had to evacuate because of Hurricane Ike at the time, 2008, something like that. And so we had to drive up. All the hotels were booked except for one on the way home in Arkansas, which is what, a 12-hour trip.
Oh my gosh.
Oh
13.
my goodness. You did not want to step on that floor. It was so nasty.
Oh geez.
But anyway, that's a side
yeah. I mean, we got here and I signed the lease agreement for our place on the way out here because we were like scrambling to try and find somewhere to live. And we had a conversation knowing that we were going to probably have to break our lease if we found a house we wanted to buy. Because of course the goal, as every Californian, is to, move to Tennessee and build a farm and build a homestead and buy property. And then you realize you can't afford it yet. So, I was like, we're probably going to have to break our lease. And the night that we showed up into this rental, I heard sirens going off in the neighborhood, but they weren't moving. And I was like, first of all, ambulances typically don't do a siren if it's after a certain time because you're in a neighborhood and it's not moving, it's stationary. I was like, I think that's a tornado siren. And my husband and I looked at each other and we were like, oh, we live in Tennessee now. Like we should probably download a storm app and know when tornadoes are coming.
I thought they give you that in your Welcome to Tennessee packet.
Right?
Yeah. It needs to be part of the onboarding to Tennessee, right?
So what brought you here to Tennessee?
Well, my husband and I, we lived in California. He grew up in like Santa Cruz area in the mountains. And I was working in San Francisco at the time. He was working in Monterey for a naval base down there. And COVID hit. And we had this temporary plan of living with his dad for 6 months to figure out like where a good halfway point would be between the commutes. And then when COVID hit, it was like, ooh, we probably shouldn't sign a lease somewhere in case we both lose our jobs. So of course, 6 months turned into like the never ending time frame of COVID of when is things going to get back to normal. And then we had this thought of maybe we'll buy a house because everyone's losing their jobs and there's foreclosures popping up. So we thought, and that of course never happened because everyone was wanting to buy homes as well. And so we ended up buying rental properties out in Texas instead.
Oh.
And then decided with all the shutdowns and everything that it was just getting to be too crazy to try and stay in a small town in California. And I found out I was pregnant and we were like, okay, what type of value system do we want to build for our family and lifestyle? And unfortunately, California just wasn't it at the time. So I had been wanting to move to Tennessee for a long time. I had visited in 2005 and fell in love with Franklin. Granted, it was a very different town back then.
It was.
And trying to convince my husband to leave California took a few years. So growing up, on a beach town and trying to get him to leave the ocean was a little more convincing. So so then finally when I got pregnant, I think the conversations of like, now we're building a family just swayed the values there a little bit of what's a priority. And so that's when we decided to like start looking around, and we had Virginia on the list, we had Georgia on the list, and South Carolina and a few different places. And I fell in love with Tennessee. So I won that battle.
Yeah.
We did. And I like what you said, family value system. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. I mean, it's a healthy thing to do, I think, for everyone, like periodically with each season of your marriage and your family is, what is the value set that we want to follow in this season? And having kids kind of did that for us. So.
It does put you in a totally different mindset for sure.
And you landed in Columbia.
And we landed
in Columbia. And the reason we landed in Columbia was we came out here October 2020, did a house hunting trip, or I guess it was October 2021. And I had, fallen in love with Franklin back in 2005 when like Starbucks was the big spot in the square to be, and when we came back out, I was like, oh, this is not the same town that I saw back then. And so that's when we actually toured for, I think it was like 10 days. We toured everywhere from Nashville to Pulaski, all the way out to Knoxville, Oak Ridge, like that whole area. We saw like over 100 neighborhoods. I had like tedious notes of everything that we saw. And that's when my friend, she's basically like my second mom, she said, if you're really looking for that feel that Franklin had all those years ago, you guys should check out Columbia.
We say the
And
same
we
thing.
got here.
Yes,
and
it's
it
so
does.
interesting. We love it. We love going down to Columbia just to roam around the square and go out to eat, and it's a neat place.
They're like mirror towns, like sister cities. I can't even call it a city yet. I feel like it's still town, but they're like mirror towns that they've both got the square. The road is called Franklin Highway, Nashville Highway, Columbia Highway, depending on where you are. So I love it. It's been great. It's funny how things come full circle because I grew up in a small farm town about an hour east of San Francisco. Swore I would never live in a small town, never live in a farm town.
And here we are.
All these years later, I'm like, oh, this is so lovely.
Now you're in Muletown.
Yes.
So when you were pregnant with your first one, I know you had shared a little bit about you had found a support system where you were. And so I would love to hear about that, the support system that you had and your transition to Columbia.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll backtrack a little bit. I never wanted to have kids growing up. I just was not somebody who thought I would be a mom. And I, grew up in the church and we'd go on mission trips and I fell in love with being overseas and like serving overseas. And so I always thought I'd be like the career woman who would start a nonprofit overseas or work on some business internationally and didn't have time for family and all of that. And it's just funny how, God kind of changed my heart over time. And I like to say, that passage in James about not making vows, like my life has been a series of like resolutions that I've had in my heart and God's like, let me just, switch it up a little bit for you.
He's a jokester too.
Yeah. I never thought I'd get married. Love my husband, obviously. But just all these things that your heart changes over time and never thought I'd live in a small town. But, so when I was pregnant, a lot of my friends from home, because it's a small farm town, they all started having kids and getting married much earlier. And so their kids were, 8, 12 years old by the time I was getting pregnant with my first. And my husband's social circle is on the other side of the spectrum, where a lot of them were either dating or not dating yet, didn't really have marriage on their minds and weren't having kids. We had like a handful of people who already had kids in our social circle. And so being in a small town in Santa Cruz and not having anyone who's like really journeying in that same season as you, plus adding now the dynamic of COVID, and just all that isolation that came with it, it felt very isolating to be pregnant. And it was my first time. I'm a huge researcher, but for some reason with this, I just didn't feel the need to like read up on everything I could about having a baby. I had a few go-to like pregnancy books that people had given me, but I didn't really dig into them very much. And so I was just kind of like, okay, we're just going to figure out how this works and how this goes. And ended up I was looking for like a yoga class because I wanted to do something to get my body physically ready. And part of that was because the regulations were changing with every appointment of, can your husband be with you when you go into labor? Can he not? And I was like, I'm not going to have the flavor of the week be that husbands can't be there and I'm in labor and I'm going through this by myself. And so we had made the decision to not do a hospital birth. We made the decision to actually go to a birth center because I wasn't emotionally ready to do a home birth. I was still freaked out, but I was like, at least if I'm in a birth center, I am in a facility where things are there and resources are there. And, but because of that, my mindset was like, I need to get my body like physically ready for this. And my husband's an athlete. He's like annoyingly good at everything. and like TriStar athlete, like him and his brother have records that they hold in high school and all that. I grew up like a singer and a dancer. And so for me, I was like, I'm going to have a natural birth. Like this will be my athletic accomplishment.
This is your
like
event.
I will, yes, like I will prove to myself that I can do this. I can birth a child naturally. And that will be like my claim to fame of I'm an athlete. I can do this.
Yeah. He can't top that. So you win.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I got to show that I am tough too. And so I wanted to get my body like physically ready for this. And so I was going to a prenatal chiropractor every week. And then I was looking for some type of like prenatal yoga class. And it is strangely hard to find that type of niche support in even a big city like San Francisco, Santa Cruz.
Really?
And so I happened to stumble across this family center that was newly launched. It's the Circle Family Center in Aptos. And they were offering like prenatal yoga. They had a Fit for Mom franchise nearby. And so the instructors were coming there. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is so close to our house. Like there's no excuse for me not to go. And I remember walking in and the experience when you came through the door, because I'm a push it to the very minute that I can person. Like I try not to be late. My husband would say I'm always late. I try not to be late, but I will try and cram as many things as I can in the day. So I'm coming in frazzled, right? And you walk in and you're just immediately hit with this like sense of calm. And she had healthy snacks available. And she comes to you like, hi, can I get you a cup of tea? Everybody's kind of coming as they are with their kids or without their kids. There's like a special room to change diapers. There's a playroom for toddlers to be in, and all the equipment was there. So you didn't have to bring anything. And it was just like, wow, this is a game changer. And so in the time frame of, going to those classes and the different workshops that they held and just seeing that consistent atmosphere of, we will be here for you. You come as you are. It doesn't matter what state or season you're in. Like you have a place here. It completely changed the way I felt about being pregnant. And a lot of the fears that I had subsided. And I felt like I had a team in my corner. And it was really cool being able to go after I had rested for about 15 days. It was really cool to be able to go back to those like prenatal and postpartum yoga classes with my infant and see the way that they even, they got to walk with me through my entire pregnancy. And now the yoga instructor, who ended up being my doula, is able to she's holding my baby and they're like taking turns, soothing her so I can get a 30-minute workout in. And it was a completely different experience than I expected. And I want to bring that to Columbia.
That's amazing. And like you were saying, when your other friends are not in the same place as you are, they're not having babies or they're already grown, it's hard to have some community. So finding a place like that is just paramount for moms, I think.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of parallels. Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of parallels with like Santa Cruz and Columbia because, Santa Cruz is its own little pocket. You have to go up and over the hill, which I call it a hill. It's a mountain, to get to like San Francisco, San Jose, like a lot of the resources that you find over the hill. And Highway 17 is not a easy drive. It is like accidents all the time.
Oh, wow.
When I used to commute by bus, sometimes it would take like 5 hours in my commute to get to San Francisco because of a shutdown or weather or trains, not getting there on time. So it's similar in the sense that I feel like when I came to Columbia and I was then pregnant with my second kid and I was looking for something similar, I was like, where can I find a prenatal yoga class? It was like, oh, you can go to Franklin for that. Or, now my second is 7 months old. And so we were dealing with like lactation consulting and, myofunctional therapy and all these things. And it's like, oh, you can go to Franklin for that. You can go to Nashville for that. When my firstborn was out here, we thought she potentially had galactosemia because there was like a false reading on her heel prick test that they do the day that they're born. And the enzymes had started to deteriorate and it just kind of gave a false reading. And so people were frantically calling me like, you've got to get this taken care of now because it's a very rare disease that they can't breastfeed and it worsens it if they have my breast milk and all this stuff. And so I was going to Vanderbilt up in Nashville and they didn't have any openings until that following October. And this was in
Crazy.
April. And so I'm sitting there like, you guys are telling me this is a life and death disease, but you're not giving me an opening till October. So I drove up there every single day, 3 days in a row, and just sat in the lobby and waited for a cancellation and said, I will sit here until you guys have an opening. And thankfully the receptionist on the third day was like, hey, I think I can squeeze you in if you can stay another hour. So,
wow. Oh, they start feeling sorry for you. Like, this lady's not leaving.
Yes.
Wow.
Good. Yeah. Because I'm the psycho who will come and sit in a waiting room 3 days straight because you're telling me my child could die. And meanwhile, I'm not nursing. And so now my milk is, my supply is all out of whack, and I'm giving her soy. So now her digestion's all out of whack. And there's just, I didn't want other parents to have to go through a lot of those same experiences, because the gap is widening between Columbia and Nashville, Columbia and Franklin, and now even Columbia and Spring Hill. All the construction, you never know how long it can take to get somewhere. And there's 17,000 families in Columbia. So there's a market here.
Most definitely. I mean, just this morning, I was on one of my mom groups on Facebook, and a lady in Spring Hill was like, I really would like to go to birthing classes. I really like to go to, all these different consultation things. She says, but I can't afford $150 a class at Williamson. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, that was covered by insurance years ago. Yeah. I'm like, I had no idea. That was just this morning. That just blew my mind that people were going, I can't go to birthing classes because I can't afford it. That is just, that's not right.
And it blows my mind. I mean, so for one, if you buy a membership at a yoga studio or a fitness studio, you can only attend a very select limited number of classes that they offer, right? But you're still paying the overall yoga studio fee. And eventually it'd be great to see them offer like a separate membership option for pregnant moms or postpartum moms, because of the fact that they can really only attend, 1 or 2 classes on their entire, and they all say that they can do modifications, and sure, of course they have a specialty in doing that. But at the same time, if I'm, 6 months pregnant, 8 months pregnant, I don't want you to have to spend your entire time telling me what I can and can't physically do, and then I'm, going through all my pregnancy woes of things in front of everybody else who's not pregnant and potentially men in the room. So anyway, there's that whole piece. But then on top of that, who can afford to go to a yoga studio with this membership every month, and then also go to see a myofunctional therapist that may or may not be covered by your insurance, and then also see a nutritionist to make sure you're getting what you need. And then also, and the list just goes on and on. And then who knows what insurance covers, the amount of medical bills that people are taking on to get preventative care or support for things like this. It's outrageous. My chiropractor, I get 10 visits covered through pregnancy and postpartum. So I'm like, cool, I can go to the chiropractor once a month, and then maybe 1 month after the baby's born. Which I fully believe the reason I had very fast labors, and I fully believe the reason my labor was so quick was because I had been going to the chiropractor every single week for my second and third trimesters, and was, getting my body ready through breath work and yoga, and just, all the things that you're learning and training yourself to do to prepare for that type of, sprint
event. Yes.
But it's not covered, and I had to pay out of pocket for that, and it's not cheap.
No.
So that's what I'm hoping is we can be that like one-stop shop. I kind of hate using that term because it feels very like ingenuine in my mind, but I want to be the one-stop shop for people that you only pay one monthly membership or a drop-in rate or whatever that looks like, and you can still access all of these different resources that you need to get through up until your kid is, 8 years old, 7 years old, 10 years old. So,
and I like that because it takes even more stress off of other mothers or to be mothers. And instead of trying to find different places to go, I like what you do. And I'm on your website right now looking at your different classes and support groups. Share your website address for our listeners.
Yeah. So it's threestrandsfamily.org. And of course, then you have to say it's three spelled out, strands is plural, family. But you should be able to get there even if you use the number three and all that. But
Yeah.
we right now, so the goal is that we want to offer a series of free classes and workshops as well as paid. We're an equitable organization, and so we don't want to have to turn away families for an inability to pay. And so we have a scholarship program that we're trying to get on the ground. And so that would be that, you know, families can either have a partial stipend towards their monthly membership or a full coverage of it. And everybody is invited. When you purchase a membership, it covers both parents as well as all the siblings in the home.
Okay.
And then we're looking at doing like an add-on for caregivers, because there's a lot of caregivers that are looking for ways that they can support both in the same town as well as from afar. So if you've got grandparents that live in another state, we want to provide some resources on things that you can do from afar as well. So everybody's included in that membership rate. And it's really, the goal is to get parents to engage with their kids as they're navigating through these seasons. And so it's not a drop your kid off here or find a caregiver or a babysitter for them so that you can do this. We really want to find ways for them to connect together through this, and depending on the age of the child, be able to like walk them through that season and support them as well. And so that's the plan. Some of the classes that we have available right now, we've got a prenatal and a postpartum bar class, and it's really like working on your pelvic floor and strengthening and preparing your body for through pregnancy for birth, and then postpartum, like getting it back to normal. And I like to say postpartum is like a year and a half after the baby, because there's so much damage done to your body. So,
but movie stars are ready in 3 months. Why can't I?
Right. And a lot of states, you don't even get any leave. You have to go back to work after 6 weeks or less, you know, so who knows? Right. So we have that class, and then we've got a Fit for Mom, like stroller strides class that we're doing, where you can bring your kid any age and you kind of do like circuit training with them as if they're the weights or the stroller is the weight. Because man, when I huff it up these hills in my neighborhood, when we walk our dog every night and I've got both kids in the stroller, that's like an extra 60 pounds right there that I'm like
I'm
pushing,
doing my
so
lifting.
I feel it. Yes. So we have that. And then we have some other things that are like in the works right now. We've got like a music class that we're looking at doing, a few pop-ups, and then a 8-week series. So regardless of the age of the kid, your parents and kids together are doing music, and there's like songbooks, and you get the CDs and the Spotify playlist and all of that to be able to do it at home. So we have that coming up. And then we're looking at doing like weekly support groups. So we'll have like a miscarriage and stillborn support group for families. We'll have a single parenting support group. We're looking at doing, how do you navigate, you know, bringing in a second kid or additional kids when you have siblings at home already. So those are some of the things that are kind of in the works right now. And we're going to hopefully have a full calendar of things as time goes on.
Now, where is your location at?
So this is the fun part of, you know, being in nonprofit management back in the day. I don't have a physical location right now. I didn't want to take on the overhead without proving out the business model first. So,
smart.
No, that's so smart.
I've seen too many businesses, especially in a town like Columbia, especially with a situation like COVID, where they just try to get off the ground and they can't. There's not, you know, nobody's willing to work. There's not labor is what I've heard, or rent is just too expensive. And so for me, my thought was, okay, we've got really great partners who offer services in Columbia. How do we connect with these partners so people know about them? And whether that's using their space off hours and renting it from them, or a lot of times they're donating it since we're a nonprofit. So using their space off hours to hold the classes, and then also having them facilitate some of the sessions. And the goal is to eventually, you know, push these families to these businesses after they're done, you know, they finish their time with Three Strands. I'd love for them to stay with us forever, but there's a season for our business, and I get that. And so being able to give them those resources and build those connections with these facilitators and providers in Columbia so that they're also getting business from it, that's the goal. And it's been really, really cool. And the businesses have been really receptive to it so far. I was a little fearful that being like the outsider from California, that people would be like, well, you're not from here. So, we don't want, but that's not been the case at all.
Great.
I've seen such an overwhelming response already, and we just launched on Saturday. So
I think that's all just so wise. I mean, just the business approach, but even more so, I'm a huge collaborator. And so just having like businesses coming together and supporting one another, it all comes to fruition for everyone. You know what I'm saying? Like when you help another business or another nonprofit in these ways, it's good for everyone. And so I love that. I know we have a similar setup here in Franklin where a lot of the nonprofits kind of work together to help these families that are in need. So I'm excited to see you kind of get into that patchwork at Columbia and really, start making a difference, because it's families, and families, it's hard to pay the bills right now with, groceries on the rise and insurance payments on the rise. I mean, so many families in the Columbia area need that support. And like you were saying, so many of us are transplants. So many of us don't have like the grandparents or the aunt and uncles or people to kind of come beside you or those close friends. So having a nonprofit where you can go and you can ask questions and feel like it's a safe place for you. I think that's just really, really great.
Yeah. And I find a lot of flexibility in us not having a physical space. Eventually I would love to have one. And the dream is to have, treatment rooms for prenatal massage and chiropractors and having, lactation consulting and one-on-one counseling. Like I would love to have all of that at some point. And we do have like a donation fund that people can contribute towards a building fund, at some point. But there is flexibility in us not having that, because I can pivot our business model based on what people in Columbia are needing. We did 2 events this last weekend for our launch. One was our own launch party, and then one was a Worthy Cause, which is another nonprofit here in Tennessee, in Columbia. And I got to have a table out there, and I had sensory bin kits. There's a woman based here who has a business, and so she donated the kits for these parties, and it was great because parents would be beelining it towards the kids zone of these events, but then the kids would actually stop at our booth because they'd see the sensory bins. And so I had camping chairs out and just told them, have a seat and relax while the kids are playing. So it gave me an opportunity to really talk with a lot of families and hearing their heart of what they wish they had because their kids are now older and they wish they had when they were going through that, or they're in the thick of it and this is what they're looking for. And there were things on there that I hadn't initially intended on doing, at least in the beginning. And I'm like, oh yeah, this would be huge. Postpartum meals was a big one. How do we get either a resource for people to be able to have like a broader meal train within our membership community that they can pass along, postpartum meals to families when they're having babies? Or how do you teach dads to create really simple but healthy nutritional meals for mom and baby? Obviously not for baby, but for mom. It becomes for baby. But how do you do that in a way that it's super easy for dad to be able to help in that area? And I was like, yeah, this is great. I had the luxury of being outside of San Francisco when I had my first. And so I was on it was basically a meal prep. It was a chef who did like a meal planning program where the meals were super healthy. They were very affordable for being like a custom home chef created meal plan. I was paying like $6 a dish, I think, for my husband and I. And so they would deliver it to my house. And that was how I got through my postpartum meals beyond what I had prepped before the baby came. But, I don't have that luxury here. So how do we work with maybe some local chefs to kind of try and come up with a similar program? So there's just, there's all kinds of ideas.
Good. Yeah.
I have a whole notebook of them.
Don't underestimate, us guys need help, show us. Yeah. I remember just struggling with my daughter when Mindy would go off on to your music functions back.
Oh yeah. Allstate and all the stuff. I used to be a music teacher.
And I'd have to take care of the kids. And my daughter at the time was young, and I remember trying to put her hair in a ponytail, and just something simple like that. She laughed at me. I thought it looked great, but apparently I did it wrong. So It was more like a pony down tail or something.
I don't know.
Yes.
It's all good. It's all good.
My
But I mean,
husband still gets she's wearing that when she dresses, when he dresses my toddler, which now my toddler, of course, wants to choose her own outfits. But there was a lot of like, what is she wearing? And, he thinks that different floral patterns match. And it's funny.
Oh, I may have gotten some of that too. It's like, you should tell me to make sure the kids are dressed. And apparently I didn't do it correctly.
Yes.
So I'm like, well, they're dressed.
and every time I would leave, which, if you're a music director, you have to go to, regional districts, blah, 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 and all of this stuff. But every time I stepped out of that house, the kids got sick. Every time. I'm talking about like super bad strep, have to go to the hospital, pneumonia. I mean, and you're like, seriously, you haven't been sick in 6 months. But the second mommy leaves for the weekend, they're going to be sick.
Right. Right.
So
I've still
got, that happened to me. I actually still have a day job while I'm doing all of this. And my kids both decided to get sick. They kind of have had like this running, I call it the like back to school virus, because it seems to be the week that you start school. It's been like this running continuous cold, but it decided to escalate into fevers. And I was doing every like homeopathic remedy I could think of to drop her fever down, and it wasn't working. And I was like, I can't go on this trip. It's like our annual offsite that we do as a company, and it's so fun. And I was like, I got to stay home. And then of course I got sick one day and then got better. But yeah, so it happens. Kids, it's like the constant virus shift. And then somebody's kid goes on vacation and they come back to school after Christmas break, and you have a whole nother wave of it.
It starts all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a pretty good immune system being a teacher. I have to say that.
So
yeah, I bet.
What I would like to know is, I'm always curious. We're always curious about, how do you come up with the name?
Yes. So Three Strands, the verse in Ecclesiastes, a cord of three strands is not easily broken. The goal behind it, or the purpose behind it, was when you're going through pregnancy and postpartum, you often have your partner with you, and that's kind of like one strand of your support. And then you have your family, extended family, your social circle, your friends, your church, like that's kind of your second strand. But we really want to act as the third strand of support that kind of binds it and reinforces that bond. And that way, you feel like you're empowered to parent or to home birth or to have another kid and get through the season that you're in. So, I thought it would be a little more intuitive, but my husband was like, you should probably explain to people what three strands means. So, but that's just the way that my like philosophical in-depth brain goes. But that was the purpose behind it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I like that. And so you just had your launch kickoff party, right?
We did.
So how did it go?
Well, I've been saying it was an expensive party for my friends. No, it went well. I did a lot of advertising beforehand. I didn't quite canvass the town early enough. I probably should have done it earlier, because I had my flyers everywhere, but they were only there for like a week or two. So I did get families who had heard about us because of the classes that we were going to be putting on, and people had told me they saw my flyers. So I felt like it was a win, even though there was just like a handful of people outside of my friends circle.
Sure.
But it was great because we were able to get like some of the dads involved, and they probably wouldn't have otherwise done some of these classes. So we did a breathwork class. And so it went well. It was great. The combination of the two together, having the two events back to back, I think is what really like pushed the momentum. Because then I was able to like talk about it all over again. And some people had gone to both and were like, oh, you're here too. So I think I just need to spend more time at a lot of these like community events in the fall season to really get the word out. So the giveaway that we did was amazing. I basically canvassed the entire square of Columbia, went around to every business. And it's funny because when you have a nonprofit, you have no shame in asking for support because it's not for yourself, right? It's for community and people around you. And amazingly enough, businesses had no problem contributing, even though it's Columbia. It's a small town. These are all family businesses for the most part. And so they're struggling, or they're feeling the impacts of the economy right now. And so it was this, do I ask? Do I not ask kind of feeling? And I just did it. I just went around and said, hey, we're a new nonprofit. We don't even have our 501c3 exemption approved yet, but we want to bring this support to families here. And I'm doing giveaways. That's a staycation, baby moon, shopping spree on the square theme. And everybody contributed. I mean, I still am getting emails even after the launch party from businesses that were like, hey, we'd love to give. How do we do so? So we basically had 3 big giveaways and then a bunch of door prizes. So the door prizes we released, every half hour in between classes and that kind of thing. And then the 3 giveaways were, one of them was a one-night stay at a historic home in Columbia. And we paired that with a date night, like Buck and Board had given a gift card, and then a day spa that's out here, Elia, and a waxing salon. They had kind of contributed some like at-home facial kits and at-home care kits. And so we kind of combined those together to be like a date night, overnight staycation. And then the other one was donated by the lovely 2 of you. And so that was a 2-night stay at your Airbnb. And we paired that with the shopping spree on the square. So all the gift cards that were given. So families who can't afford to go on vacation, they can have like a cute staycation and then also have like a shopping spree kind of donated to them. And then the last one was a 2-night stay at another historic home in Columbia. So we're still running the promo. We were doing it as like a launch month promo.
Okay.
And so the end of the month is coming. So people can still be entered in to win. But basically, if you sign up for a drop-in class, if you purchase a class pack, or if you purchase a monthly membership, you're automatically entered to win one of the 3. And because there's 3, the chances are pretty good of people winning. So I'm excited to see, who wins for that and see what we can do for families in the future, something similar to that as well. So.
Yes. So I know you said it was an expensive party for you and your friends, but you had some people come. Here's the thing. You at least started. How many people don't start?
Yeah.
And, at least you started, so you've got that ball rolling. And it's going to be fun to see how it picks up speed and, where this thing goes.
I mean, I started this with my fun money budget. My husband and I each have our own like fun money accounts that we put a certain amount in every month. And
that's cool.
He has his online business that he does, and I have this. And I'd planned on launching my event planning business out here. But, after kids, it's just like I said earlier, your priorities shift. And as much as I love doing events, the thought of me being gone every weekend again and having to put that on my husband to now watch kids every weekend is like, I don't know if I want this anymore.
That's a real statement. That's a very true statement.
It is. And I really want to be present in my kids' lives, especially since I still have a full-time job during the week. I want to be present in their lives. And so I thought, well, it's socially acceptable for your kids to come with you to a family center. So why don't we do that?
No, I love and respect you so much for that. And I know one of the biggest things was the last year I was teaching, I missed the opening night of my daughter being in a play. I missed a couple of concerts. And I'm like, I am missing my own children events. So I could be holding my own teaching events, my own choir concerts, my own musical rehearsals. And so it was, I kind of just went to Jason and I'm like, I'm kind of miserable teaching because I'm raising other people's kids. And so
that's so real.
I mean, I still like do voice lessons and stuff like once a week because I'm very passionate about it, but it changes everything when you have kids and you have this short amount of time with them.
Absolutely. Especially in these younger years, right? They're so foundational to building their personality and their value system and their attitude. I mean, even just the change of my daughter, my firstborn, we started her in preschool when she was about 18 months old. And the shift even being there 3 days a week, it was like, oh, my sweet little girl, we need to like correct some of this back, you know? So yeah, it's so true. Like to be able to be there and
to be there to
you know,
see that and to guide that, you know, that is, we can't protect them forever, but we can be that guide for them. And if you're not present, then other people are. And
absolutely.
That's how I saw it.
And that's really why the goal is that your entire family comes to all the events. You know, my husband, thankfully, is an amazing partner and so gracious to be able to watch the kids as I've been, you know, staying up late at night trying to build this and get this ready and get this going. And I'm being really conscious about how I'm scheduling things and mindful of him. But the goal is that we want to be able to either have childcare there for older kids or have them involved in whatever the class is. So that way I'm not just now all of a sudden giving him another job of, you know, now he's babysitter every night or every weekend. And the goal is really for like parents who are in that same situation. A lot of times the feedback that I'm getting, at least, is that if there is something for moms, it's for infants. And as soon as they get into toddler and teen ages, they're now excluded from it. And so how do we really engage them as well? And they're so capable. I mean, my 2-year-old, granted, I think my 2-year-old is slightly unique. Every mom probably says that, but I think my 2-year-old is slightly unique, but she's so helpful. Like if I really stop and look past the temper tantrum and kind of get to the heart of why she's having a moment, it's usually because she's hungry. But if you feed her and if you engage with her and give her some attention for 5 minutes, because you're not, she is completely different demeanor and wants to be so helpful and wants to pick up things or wants to give you things for the baby or wants to help make sure the baby's not putting things in her mouth. And I just feel like they're so capable and we just underestimate their ability. And so being able to really include them in that is going to just shape their confidence even more. So
having a moment.
That's the goal.
So that's what it's called.
Yeah. We have lots of them.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I remember the first moments.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're now at 15 and 21, so we have different kinds.
So your
of
moments look a little different and a little more expensive.
They're still there. Yes, they're still there. They're
but
different.
Yeah, but you know, our kids are actually pretty chill.
They are. They're the best kids. They're really
pretty
cool.
chill kids. I don't
Yeah.
know. We got it all out early. They say you
Yeah.
get it. Either they're stinkers and they're little and then they start to chill out, or you have this perfect kid and then it turns. So
yeah,
we're like, we got
I think
it
I was a little
done
bit of the
early.
latter. I was a little on the latter side, but you know, we come back around, or most
It's
of
all
us
good.
hopefully do.
It's
Yeah.
part of it. Lots
There
of
are.
breathing. Those breathing techniques you were talking about, having those.
Man, I still like this last birth. I don't know how much time we have, but this last birth was a home birth because my firstborn was so short that our midwife, you know, as we're sitting there in like maternal bliss postpartum, I'm like sitting in bed with my newborn and she looks at me and goes, okay, we need to have a serious conversation now. Your labor for being your first child was as fast as someone having their third child. And then she looks at my husband and says, you're going to need to learn how to deliver a baby. And then she looks at both of us and says, you both are going to need to learn to get comfortable with home births because you will most likely not make it to a hospital on your next kid.
Wow.
So then I get pregnant. I have my second child, planning on doing a home birth. You know, in my mind, I've gotten through that. Jokes on us because the hospital is right down the street. So I probably could have made it. But, you know, I'm in my mind wanting to do this home birth. And so I'm getting my toddler ready for preschool and feel my first contraction at 6:45 and was like, surely today is not the day. Today is not going to be the day, you know, and I'm all in denial and getting her ready for school as I'm like seeing my contractions are 10 minutes apart from the get-go. And was like, oh man, like this can't be the day. And then about an hour later, they got to 4 minutes apart. And then they started getting a little more intense to where I would breathe. I'd like stop and breathe through a contraction. And then I knew I had 4 minutes. So I'd quick get my kid dressed. And then I'd stop and breathe through my next contraction. And then I'd quick go put move the truck out of the way so that everyone could park in the driveway. And my neighbor, her daughter is in the same class. And so I had asked them if they could take Reagan to school, because I'm envisioning, my water breaking in line, or I have to figure out how to move cars and get the cars back and all that. And in the time frame that they showed up, put the car seat in the truck and came back in the house, I was on the ground moaning. And so she looks at me and goes, "Can I stay with you until someone gets here?" And so she helped move me into the bedroom, and she got my bath ready. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm supposed to do a water birth. It's supposed to be a bath, And so she's making my bed for me, because I had already pulled out all my sheets and everything and all my postpartum gear, knowing that okay, I've got mobility now, do it now before you can't.
Right.
And my husband had already left for work. He leaves 6 a.m. So we're texting well, do you think you can hold out? Let me know if it gets worse. And he's in his meeting to do his handoff with the team, knowing that paternity leave is starting soon. And I get the text "Babe, you've got to come home now." And he looks at me and he looks at it. He reads it to his team, and they're like, "Go, you got to go." So he walked in with the midwife assistant, not even the midwife. And the baby was born less than 10 minutes later. It was 7 minutes later or something like that, from that text message to baby in hand. So he just made it. And then the midwife walks in about 25 minutes later while I'm sitting in the tub with the baby. And she's like, "Oh, we have a baby."
You're like, "Thanks."
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that is
it was
quick.
Very quick. So I called my first midwife from California and was like, "Hey, you were right on.
You are right. Oh my goodness.
Second baby came very fast."
Well, ours is totally different types of stories.
Yeah.
Most of them are.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Our daughter, she's late to everything. She didn't watch this, so I can tell. But she's late to everything, and drives us crazy sometimes when you're growing up, trying to get her ready and get some giddy up under her.
Yeah.
And we joked that the only time in her life that she wasn't in a hurry was when she was born.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she came in full emergency. When
they say screaming and kicking, that was true.
Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I was a C-section baby. My mom, I was stuck in her, I guess my head was stuck in her chest cavity or something, breech. So, I was a C-section baby, but
yeah.
See, I got to see Cohen do the C-section, our son. So I got to watch the whole thing. I'm surprised I didn't faint.
I'm very surprised he didn't faint too.
Because I watched them cut and everything.
I think if I ever had one, I would want to watch it. I know they say you can't do that because you'll even if you think you can make it, you'll pass out looking at yourself being cut open. But I think I would be so fascinated.
They let me in Texas because in Texas. But I told them, I was literally, my first one was an emergency. There was no time for any of that. It was, they got me in there and I had a complete abruption. So it was it was, miracle baby. She, so with, there was no curtains. There was nothing. It was me and the doctors. And so the second one, they're like, "Oh no." I'm like, well, "I've already seen one,
Yeah.
I want to see this one. I want to see the second one. It's not going to bother me." And they did. They let me watch
both C-section babies.
Yeah.
See, I just think that's fascinating. That's like when my mom got LASIK surgery way back in the day. She was one of the testing people for LASIK back in the 90s. And I remember watching the videos of them, and I was just like, it's like the close-up of their eye and cutting open the cornea or the retina, whatever that eye part is, and peeling it away. I just think it's so fascinating.
I was a biology kid. I loved biology. So I guess it just doesn't bother me. But most people it does. And I totally understand why they say no. But
she keeps coming and bringing things to me. "Hey, look at this."
He's like, "No." I'm like, "What's wrong? Isn't that cool?" I'm like,
it's amazing after having kids how much you
heebie-jeebies over here.
A biology person, I don't think I've ever talked about poop so much in my life.
Poop happens, and it's all about, the kids. And The things you used to get so embarrassed about, you are not embarrassed about anymore once you have kids, because it's just part of it. It's life.
I totally agree. I mean, I learned that my letdown was fast because of my kids' poop. There's this book that a friend of mine had given me that's like all about your breastfeeding journey. And I had no idea, because I'm a first time mom, you know, I'm just like, oh, that's weird. It's a weird color today. I must have eaten something funky. And it was like, no, like if it's frothy and green, it means you have a fast letdown and your kid's like not getting the full fat at the end of your letdown. I was like, oh, this is great. And then it tells you what to do to change that. And all of a sudden my kids' digestion issues changed and I didn't have a fussy kid anymore. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So you learn a lot through it.
You do learn a lot, you know, between the first and the second. And I'm the weirdo that watches Midwife, the BBC show.
Oh yeah.
So so I was watching that, and I'm sure Jason has to hear the giving birth sounds every single night, because I usually watch it when he goes to bed. But I love that they have a full week at the birthing center, because birthing center is, you know, was a huge thing in, you know, in, like I say, in Britain for, I don't know, 100 years, until the modern hospital kind of took them over. But it's just so interesting how they had a whole week to be with the nurses and have all that stuff explained to them.
Totally. My midwife, my first midwife for my firstborn, she had a 5-5-5 rule. So 5 days in the bed, topless, with baby, you're not getting up for anything other than go to the bathroom, and you're just establishing that nursing relationship. Everyone's bringing you food. Don't worry about showering. Don't worry about bathing the baby, like all that. Then 5 days on the bed, get up, go to the couch, you know, do what you want, still not leaving the house, make a meal for yourself, but people are still primarily doing things for you. You're not doing any heavy lifting. Again, prioritizing the nursing relationship. And then 5 days near the bed. And so that gave you a total of 15 days before you actually left the house. Your body is getting back to normal and starting to heal. Your breastfeeding relationship is strengthened. Like, it was amazing. It worked wonders. Now, I didn't follow that with my second because I had a toddler, but I felt it by not following that. You know, my body didn't heal as quickly. So there's something to be said for, you know, the way that they do things over in Europe and back in the day. And there was a madness, or a method to the madness. So,
and the contrast to 36 hours at the hospital, go home.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So having the support is so important. So, well, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show and talking with us today. I actually got educated, and I've had 2 kids. So thank you for that. And thank you for seeing a need down in Colombia and wanting to make a change down there. I would love that as well.
Yeah. And too, before we wrap
thank you
up,
both.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some ways that people can help out and maybe get involved, or, you know, what are some of those ways?
That's a great question. There's a couple of ways. So the immediate need would be, you know, we're looking for physical spaces that we can utilize in Colombia for these workshops and sessions, and they each need to have a different atmosphere. So obviously a miscarriage support group can't be in a huge dance studio. You need something that's a little cozier. So I'm, you know, scavenging around looking for space, and with that, looking for facilitators who are willing to share their expertise. I don't have any certifications other than I'm a connector and an event planner, and, you know, can do some digital marketing and things like that. So I'm really trying to like bridge the gap there between these facilitators and providers. So if there's an expert in the area, I'd love to like add them to our repertoire of things that we're giving this community. Then there's like some more tangible ways, you know, the scholarship fund, like I mentioned earlier, because there's so many like low income families in Colombia that we want to support and make sure they're not turned away from something like this. So you can donate on the website for the scholarship fund. You can also donate for the building fund as we eventually get our own space. And then to just come to class, be a registrant, to come to one of our workshops. And, you know, if you want to buy a class pack because you're not quite sure, or a drop-in because you're not quite sure about doing the monthly rate, the class packs don't ever expire. You know, I know parenting seasons are crazy. And so if you don't think you can come to once a week, but you know that you could probably do 1 or 2 a month, there's a class pack for that for a reason. Or if you need to be able to, come in a couple months. I did actually create a discount code for all your listeners as well.
Oh, great.
So
Awesome.
Anybody who uses the code You Matter, you spelled out, You Matter, they'll get to try a class for free. And that'll just be a running discount for you guys, because I love what you guys are doing as well. This is so great that you're willing to put time in for people like us who are trying to get things off the ground for our communities. And that's amazing that you're doing this on the side of your business and running your own family. So, so yeah, that's something for your listeners to be able to do. If they want to try a class, they can just sign up with that code and they'll get the class free.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. This has been a joy. It really has. And I truly hope to see your nonprofit grow, and you can eventually focus all of your time on this.
That's the goal.
I'm sure you enjoy your other job, whatever that may be, but
I do.
Sure this is your heart. This is your passion.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we get that. And we thank you for doing this, because it's people like you that make the world a better place. And if there wasn't people like you out there, then it would be a lot, I guess, darker, a lot more tough.
Yeah.
So I appreciate everything that you're doing, and thank you for coming on here. Thank you for including us on your journey, the start of your journey, and so happy to see it flourish. And of course, we want to stay in touch. We'll be, connecting again down the road. But anyway, until then, thank you so much, Erika, and hope everything goes your way. And maybe this time next year, you have a place, you got the community involved and helping, more families. So
yeah, that's the dream. Well, thank you both for having me. I really do appreciate it. And I'm excited to be able to give you the updates and tell you who won your staycation. So I'll definitely keep you guys posted.
All right. Well, that is all for this show. Thank you so much for listening. Nashville, we love you. And always remember that you matter. Talk to you later. And that brings us to the end of another episode of You Matter Nashville.
We hope today's show has left you feeling as uplifted and inspired as we are. Remember, the spirit of Nashville lives in all of us, and every small act of kindness echoes throughout the community.
A huge thank you for listening and even being a part of our You Matter community. If you love this episode, please share with friends and leave us a 5-star review. It helps us reach more listeners and spread the love.
And if you know anyone that is looking to make a move to Middle Tennessee area, we are real estate professionals known as the Hoover Team, and we would be honored to serve them with excellence.
Until next time, keep making a difference, Nashville. You matter more than you know.